I don't think they stood up. Yeah, J.D. Vance may have said, I wonder if this is going to work, but if you do it, I'll support you. This was the president's war. Benjamin Netanyahu pushed hard, but he was pushing on an open door. And he was pushing on an open door for the following reasons. Number one is Venezuela, in which the president of the United States, empowered by the brilliance, tactical brilliance of the American military, figured that somehow, in some way, Iran could be made into a happy ending like Venezuela. My colleague at Carnegie, Karim Sajapur, says Trump was looking for an Iranian Delcy Rodriguez, but what he found was an Iranian Kim Jong-un, and not just one Iranian Kim Jong-un. He found quite a few. So that was element number one, is recency bias. The second element was Trump's previous experiences with Iran. The experts told him not to get out of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or there would be very serious consequences. In 2018, in his mind,
Obama's JCPOA, just for the audience, that's Obama's JCPOA.
Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the Iran nuclear agreement. Then the experts told him, don't kill Qasem Soleimani, the head of the Al-Quds force of the IRGC, or you'll spark a regional war. Well, there was no regional war. And then they told him, if you strike Iran's nuclear sites, no American president, Republican or Democrat, has done it. If you do it, you're going to spark a regional war. And guess what, Mario? There was a highly telegraphed Iranian response against Qatar. That was it. So Donald Trump figures, hey, I got away with this. I can be risk ready. One final point. You can't, in January, when the Iranians are murdering their own citizens in the streets, basically say, help is on the way, seize your institutions, and we'll hit them hard, and then deploy the largest amount of American missile and air assets since the Second Iraq War. You can't pretend that you didn't do that. So he got stuck with that. And it all came together when Netanyahu said, we have intelligence, maybe it was confirmed by CIA, maybe not, that Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei would be at a place certain, at a time certain. And Trump wanted to kill the Supreme Leader.
Yeah.
That's, in my judgment, that's how we got here.
And a lot of people, the narrative in January was you get rid of the Supreme Leader and the top guys of the IRGC, and you get new, fresher blood, new people that are more moderate. Either these people didn't exist, or as we saw reports early on that these people were killed as well. I think Trump or someone said that we had a lot of people in mind. Trump said it. We had a lot of people in mind that were also killed. And a lot of people were saying that Israel killed those people because Israel was seeking to drag the U.S. into a bigger war, which is a good question for you. But I'm taking a lot of notes. You don't usually take that many notes in an interview. So you're saying that Trump had these successes with Iran. I've wrote 3 of them. Maybe I missed one. The killing of Soleimani. People said that if you kill him, Qasem Soleimani, it'll spark regional war. That did not happen. He then, broke the JCPOA, tore it apart. Nothing happened. Iran did not retaliate. Then there was a strike on the nuclear program, and that didn't spark nuclear regional war. Iran also was very restrained, and that restraint might have led them to where we are today. Unfortunately, they were very restrained, had that telegraphic strike on Qatar. Did I miss anything else other than these 3?
No, I think that was Venezuela.
Venezuela is separate.
Trump's rhetoric and the deployment of American military assets.
Okay.
One more point. What Trump perceived to be the failure of negotiations in Oman and then Geneva. They could not succeed any more than 21. I tweeted out a while ago, because there's an article in the New York Times, basically, that Vance tried and failed. 21 hours may seem like a long time to the vice president, but Middle East negotiations, Mario, have 2 speeds. That I can assure you from my own personal experiences, slow and slower. There was no way that in 21 hours or even 21 days, you could have figured out how to deal and found a balance of interests on the core issues that they raised. That was the other point. And then Trump's favorite expression, and to agree, he's right. The Iranians are playing for time, Mario, because our clock, America's clock, Trump's clock, is ticking at a much faster pace than the Iranian clock, which is ticking much more slowly because they believe they are winning.
Do you think Trump believes he's winning?
No, the Iranians.
Okay, Iranians. Okay,
they're winning. They believe.
But you say they believe. Do you think that belief is true? Are they winning, or?
I mean, look, if the war stopped tomorrow, here's what we would see. Iran has demonstrated that it can manage and literally grant preferential access to what or who gets through the straits. The 60% uranium, the 900 pounds stored in 30 scuba-sized tanks somewhere, they retain. Number three, they've intimidated and undermined Gulf security and stability. And number four, the regime has not only survived, it's cohered and it's maintained control of the repressive and oppressive instruments of state power. That's in the win column. On the US side, they've set the nuclear program back. They've destroyed much of the ballistic missile inventory, production facilities, planetary mixers, air defense, command and control, drone manufacturing. But the regime remains in place and defiant. And over time, much of these assets that have been destroyed, it's going to take a while, can somehow be re-energized. The truth is, Mario, they don't need a whole lot. You said it yourself. Drones over Hormuz, drones against specific refining facilities, infrastructure in the Gulf. That's all they need.
So then, first, do you agree that the negotiations haven't really failed? This is all part of the negotiations. What we're seeing now, the two warships, American warships, sailing through, allegedly trying to, or actually succeeding in sailing through the Strait of Hormuz, is the US testing Iran's position and how willing Iran was to strike them. Iran pretending the talks failed. I'm using the word pretending loosely, it's my opinion. The US saying that the talks failed. This is, the ceasefire still stands. Trump making his threats, will strike their power plants, etc. That's all part of the negotiation process, just Trump's way of negotiating.
I mean, I wish. That's a very charitable interpretation, I think, of the strategy. I think the administration is in a strategic conundrum. I don't know how they find a way out that it can even begin to, well, let me put it this way. If Trump tomorrow wanted to end the war and to construct a victory narrative, he could do it, because there's not a single constituency in this country that he cares about. Maybe some hardline conservatives, but there's not a single constituency that will be determinative to his politics that would do anything other than breathe a collective sigh of relief if the U.S. got out of this war. This was a war of choice. It was undertaken without any sense of preparing the public, the Congress, I'd say our allies, but had we briefed our allies in advance, I mean, frankly, that would be irrelevant. They would have argued against it, and they're certainly not going to contribute offensively any of the assets that the U.S. military has deployed. Part of the negotiations, that would assume that the administration, and look, when you negotiate with somebody, again, my experience, never part of the Iranian negotiating model. Negotiations work when you have a balance of interests. When each party walks away from the negotiating table believing and being able to explain the fact that they got something. I'm not sure that's Trump's view of negotiation. Trump's view of negotiation is I win, the other guy loses. And it's tough with Iran, Mario, because it's a brutal, repressive, authoritarian regime that murders, tortures, imprisons its citizens. It's not like the U.S. would be brokering a deal between Switzerland and Germany, or even Israel and Egypt. So there's a real drag on the negotiations because we're dealing with Iran. It is not a normal nation. Kissinger described it as a revolution that needed to become a nation. It's somewhat of an exaggeration. The Iranians are driven by nationalism as well as very often very pragmatic policies. But nonetheless, they are not, we've never had negotiations other than the JCPOA with a country like Iran, Russia, China, to be sure, both serial human rights abusers. I just don't see the elements required to reach a negotiation as being present. You don't have two parties who are willing and able. You don't have a shared sense of urgency. And I don't know what the final end product of the negotiations would be. You're not going to resolve proxies, ballistic missiles, frozen assets, sanctions relief, the Straits. Have I left anything out?
I'm taking nuclear program.
Yeah. If I throw this up against the wall, it may well be, Mario, that this thing just peters out.
Yeah, true.
That in essence, what happens
Gaza.
is Trump does not go back to that insane notion of tethering his social media posts to destroying a civilization, because you pointed out what the consequences of that is going to be on the Gulf. But maybe it just peters out. Maybe, yes, the kinetic activity, it continues. Gradually, people cut their own deals in order to move product through the Straits. Yeah. I'm not sure. The Chinese at some point are going to say to Iran, look, they built up an enormous reserve, over 1 billion barrels. They're leading the world in solar, in wind, in EVs. They prepped for this. They prepared for it. But if the reports are true that the Chinese played something of a role in pressing Iran to go to Islamabad, that price is going to increase as you get increases in not just in crude, in fertilizer, in helium. It's planting season. Natural gas, that's got to be transported. And you've got what? Qatar produces 25%. Natural gas is critical to producing ammonia and urea, which is fertilizer price. Planting season here. Diesel fuel is up, and we're doing relatively well here in comparison to countries in Asia, which really are, and Pakistanis, 85% of the product. Pakistan, India.
Everyone's praising Pakistan for leading those negotiations. I say, look, they deserve the praise, but they also have no choice. They're in a very desperate position. In the early days of the war, they started asking people to work from home. I think
they are indeed.
Asia's very, very screwed. You did say there's no sense of urgency. Isn't there? Because Iranians don't want to keep getting bombed. They just faced massive protests in January that threatened the entire regime's or the entire government's stranglehold on the country. And that was before the bombardment. So they may not be able to survive another few months or years of sanctions after what they've been through. And they need to spend money now reconstructing everything. So there is a sense of urgency there, putting aside the fact that they're waking up every morning not sure if that's going to be their last day alive, seeing how they keep getting picked up. That would have some impact on their psyche, no matter how ideological they are.